Hi, my name is Rebecca Long, and I have a particular passion for children's literature, having studied for a PhD in Irish children's literature in Trinity College and working as a book doctor with Children's Books Ireland. This talk, Literacy for Little Learners, comes to you as part of the Parenting 2020 series of talks in partnership with Wexford County Council and the CYPSC in Wexford. I want to talk to you about reading relationships, where little readers and big readers get to know each other through books. Reading relationships are really important for your child's imagination and education. As parents, it's your job to get involved in your child's learning and reading life. Even before they go to school, your children should be listening to stories, songs and rhymes, and you're the best person to do the telling. The language experiences children have before they're 6 help their brains to grow and make the connections it needs for languages, communication and thinking. Without activities like singing, talking and reading, little brains miss out on all these connections. Telling stories and singing songs will help your budding little readers to develop their early literacy skills and have a lot of fun at the same time. Reading is one of the best and loveliest ways to create a home environment that's rich in language and literacy experiences. Children hear sounds before they can hear words. This is why it is so important to talk to your child as much as you can. Not only are you communicating with your child and forming a deep emotional bond with them, they're learning to love the sound of your voice and to associate it with comfort and safety. Reading to your child is a natural extension of this communication. Reading books aloud to children, even very young children, gets their imaginations going and helps them to begin to understand the world around them. Even when your little reader is reading independently and confidently by themselves, it's still really important for you to read together. You need to stay involved in their reading lives because no matter how big your little readers get, they'll keep benefiting from the bond you've created through reading with them and talking to them about books. It'll even help them in school. No one knows your child as well as you do, and by reading stories that you know will interest, excite and challenge them, you can stretch their understanding, stimulate their curiosity and motivate them to help improve their reading skills. With a picture book, your little reader looks at the pictures while you read the words, so you share the reading, you make the story together. You'll see the close relationship between pictures and words and how it makes meaning, how the words and the pictures make the story. This closeness echoes the relationship that exists between parent and child. The best picture books have a mysterious gap between the pictures and the words, and that's where your little reader's imagination comes in, and your imagination too. When you engage with your little reader through books, stories, songs and rhymes, you'll be helping them to love books and enjoy reading, to understand how stories work and how much fun it can be to make up their own. Never forget that as moms and dads, you're the most important people in your little reader's reading lives. So now let's talk about reading sessions and building a reading routine. Reading aloud can and should be an expression of love. Your little reader will hang in your every word as you make the story and its characters come to life. Reading out loud with your little reader creates memories and associations that will define their childhood. It's your job as a parent to support your child and to make sure that reading itself and the sessions you share are not only beneficial but enjoyable as well. So let yourself be guided by your child's natural interests and your own as well to create a deeply personal reading program that will engage you both. Read with your child as often as you can. Read to them when they're in the bath, when you go for walks or adventures. In this way, reading becomes connected with brilliant family activities, and it isn't confined to a specific time or place. It is especially important to read to your child at bedtime, when you can make it even more special. In this cozy environment, when they're snuggled up and ready to listen, you'll have their undivided attention. That means you need to make your reading performance meaningful and memorable. You can even share the reading duties. You read one page, and then your little reader takes over and reads the next. You'll end up learning from each other. Reading together shows your little reader that you think reading is important. Not only are you creating special memories together, you're combining the benefits of speaking, listening and storytelling into one amazingly beneficial activity. Through these reading sessions or reading moments, your child will learn how to listen and concentrate, collect new words for their word banks, and start to understand why things happen the way they do in stories. They'll learn to put ideas in order, sharpen their memory skills, and notice the connection between spoken words read aloud and words written in print on a page. So creating the right reading environment is really important. Children who are read to and whose parents are involved and invested in their education and who grow up in a home where reading is valued and encouraged do better in school. Young readers tend to be more curious and adventurous and empathetic. They can respect their friends and their teachers because reading makes you a better person. So let me give you a few tips on making the best of your reading sessions. Before you start, turn off the television and the radio to help your little reader focus. Choose a quiet space away from the everyday traffic of the house and make sure it's comfortable. Always start a new book by looking through it with your child and talking about what the story might be about, looking at the cover, at the contents page and the pictures. As you do this, you can use words from the book that you think might be difficult for your child to read and point them out. This will help your little reader by giving them a sense of what might be in the book before they start to read it. If they're prepared for some of the words they will read, you're helping them to succeed from the start. Once you've done a bit of a walkthrough, you can take it in turns to read. Your child might want to read the book to you on their own, and if it isn't too difficult for them, this is great. But taking turns can also be fun and can increase your child's confidence. Keep the flow going and keep your child interested. Point to the words as you read, matching one spoken word to one written word, so your child will associate the sound of the words with their appearance on the page. Talk about the pictures as you encounter them and discuss what's going to happen next. Make sure your little reader realises that the pictures are just as important as the words. Think of your reading as a performance and make it entertaining. Read at a steady, consistent pace and be conscious of your intonation. Be expressive and make the story come to life. Constantly and consistently encourage your child. Reading is a difficult thing to learn in the beginning, so encouragement is vital. Notice when your little reader has done well and tell them. And when you get to the end, don't forget to talk about the story, because reading doesn't stop just because you've reached the last page. But what about the skills your little readers actually need before they can read? And what about the skills they need to keep developing in order to get the most out of the books they like? Reading is like riding a bike or playing football. The more your readers practice, the better they'll get, and the better they get, the more they'll read. It's your job as parents to make sure your little readers have the chance to read to the absolute best of their abilities. You want them to be the biggest reading superstars they can be. So here are some of the skills they need for a rewarding and stimulating reading life. The first one on the list is letter knowledge, and it means being able to see and recognise individual letters and to know that each letter is different from another. You have to help your children make friends with letters and appreciate the different personalities they have. Young children need to know letter names and sounds because knowing how the alphabet works will help them be successful and brilliant readers later on. Recognising letters is what we call a shape skill, so when you talk about or play with shapes, you're helping your little readers to get ready for letters. Point out the shapes of blocks, balls, toys and other objects that might be lying around the house and talk about how they're the same and how they're different. The next one is word awareness, and this means being able to play with the sounds and words and being able to have fun with language. Your little reader needs to be able to recognise why words like cat and bat rhyme, and that you can break words up into little pieces like fantastic. This word awareness skill is important because it helps children to take words apart and sound them out when they're reading. You can help your little readers perfect this skill by singing songs with them, even if you don't have a note in your head. Reciting poems helps too. When you read a poem out loud, it's very easy to hear word sounds. Hearing rhymes over and over again will help your children to recognise word patterns. It's a wonderful chance to help your children develop a love of poetic language too, which is different to normal everyday language, richer and even more special. Singing songs together also makes it easy to hear the different syllables or parts in words. Even saying simple games like I spy with my little eye can help build your child's word awareness and sound knowledge. Games with magnetic letters in the fridge can also be helpful and great fun too. That leads us on to the next skill, vocabulary or new words. The word discovery skill is a quest as well as a skill, and it's linked to the word recognition skill that we've just talked about. This involves knowing the names of things. It's important for beginner readers to have a large store of words when they start to read, because they'll find it so much easier to sound out and understand words they're already familiar with. One of the best ways to help your little readers improve word discovery skills is to talk with them a lot. The number of words in your child's vocabulary bank is directly related to the number of words they hear you using, so you have to give them as many different words as possible. Think of them as word presents you don't even have to wrap. You could decorate your fridge with word lists of animals, plants, cars, cities, names, colours, anything you can think of. The more words the better. Why not start a word of the week chart? Pick a new word each week and try and use it in a different sentence every day. Story skills are next on the list. The ability to tell stories, to describe things or events is so important in everyday life, and the better your little readers are at it, and the more they understand how stories work, the more fun they'll have when they play, and the more they'll get out of the books that they're reading. So story skills help your children with comprehension and with understanding what they read. If your little readers don't understand what they're reading, they'll lose interest and get fed up. And who could blame them? Like the word discovery skills, story skills improve whenever you take the time to talk to your children. Help them to describe the toys they're playing with and to tell stories about them and the things they might get up to when you leave the room. A walk in the park can turn into an adventure story. When you're reading with your older readers, spend some time talking about the story, asking questions about what they think might happen next or how they think the characters in the story might be feeling. The more they think about the stories they're reading, the more they'll understand. All this means is that they'll be able to lose themselves in the books they read more and more easily, and that's one of the best feelings in the world. Speaking of feelings, that's what the next skill really is, a feeling. Motivation, or the I want to read all the time feeling, is all about your little reader's interest in books, and it's directly related to the enjoyment they get out of reading. Children who are enthusiastic about books are more likely to become lifelong readers, and that's what we want. There are so many books in the world. Your little readers need all the time they can to read as many of them as they can. And that really does take a lifetime. Your little readers are naturally curious, and if this nosiness is nurtured and encouraged, they'll be much more interested in the reading process. If they ask what happens next during a reading session, your answer has to be, let's find out. So read often. Rather than having just one long reading session, you can break it up throughout your day, whatever suits your family schedule. Talk about books as much as you can, and always have one in your back pocket when you head out on an adventure. If reading is as natural to your children as daydreaming and getting their shoes muddy, then you're doing a great job. So these are the essential reading skills your little readers need to be the best reading superstars they can be. Letter knowledge, word awareness, word discovery, story skills, and motivation. Reading is one of the most important things you can do with your children. It helps them with school, with play, and with life in general. So let's help them get started. Your children know that reading is an adventure, and like all good adventurers, they need the right tools to help them get the job done. So first thing we need for you and your child is a reading toolkit. And as always, first things come first, the bookmark. Every adventurous reader needs an arsenal of bookmarks that will stand up to repeated expeditions, so stock up. Thankfully they come in all shapes and sizes, and colours too, so choosing a few that suits your children's personality down to the ground won't be hard. But if you happen to be part of an arty family, why not make your own? You could turn it into a project and create a special bookmark for each book or series you embark on together. Paper, markers, crayons, glitter, ribbon, tassels. Trust me, the mess will be worth it. So bookmarks are sorted, and your children will never lose their place in a reading adventure again. But what happens if they get stuck? What happens if they come up against a word they just don't know? Tough words can be as difficult to get around as boulders. So our next tool should be a super dictionary. You pick out a special notebook or journal and decorate it until it's just perfect. Don't forget a special pen too, as that's an essential part of the toolkit. Now here's the plan. Whenever your reading adventurer comes across a word that just won't let them get past it, they say, "Ha!" good and loud, because they're adventurers after all, and they write it into their notebook. It doesn't matter how many word boulders they get stuck on. In fact, the more the better. At the end of the chapter, you put your heads together and see if you can puzzle out those boulders. And this is the best bit. You get to find the definition of that word and come up with your own super version. It gets written into that notebook, and then all of a sudden you have a super dictionary, personalised especially for your reading adventure. Pretty soon they'll be leaping over those word boulders in one bound. And I should know, because I made a super dictionary with my mother when I was in a young reading adventure. I remember reading the first page of The City Cats by Colin Dan and wanting to give up because there were so many hard words that I didn't understand. That's when we came up with the super dictionary. It was the perfect survival tool for reading. The word disperse was the first tricky word that went into my dictionary, and I'll never forget that it means to spread out or disappear, just like a group of cats leaving a field in a hurry. So we have our arsenal of bookmarks, and that super dictionary is getting bigger with every chapter your adventurers read. But the toolkit still isn't full. We need another notebook, and yes, another special pen. Your reading adventure is embroiled in an amazingly exciting chapter. They're racing to finish it because they know they'll never be able to sleep until they do. They reach the end breathless and exhausted, and their brains are practically tingling with questions and ideas. This is where the thought book comes in, and that special pen. All those brain tinglings need somewhere to go, so why not write them down? That way, if your reading adventurers have any questions, or even if they just want to write something down because it's so brilliant they don't want to forget it, it's all there in the thought book, super secret and super interesting. The toolkit's nearly full, but there's just one more thing it needs. Your reading adventurers need a reading compass, so they always know where they're going. And that's you. Your reading adventurers need to know that you're there to help point them in the right direction if they get confused, or if one particular reading adventure turns out to be too hard right now. As their own personal reading compass, you'll be there to point them in the direction of the next reading adventure. So here's the reading toolkit, stocked and ready to go. Bookmarks, so your reader will always know where they are, the super dictionary for those tricky words, the thought book for all the ideas they'll be having, and their reliable reading compass so they'll always be heading in the right direction. Now they have their reading toolkit, they're ready for anything. But how do you choose the right book for the right reader? It's not a science, because every little reader is different, even unique. Some children like to read about talking unicorns, others prefer to lose themselves in books about man-eating plants. As grown-ups and parents, you have to make sure that the books you recommend for your little readers don't disappoint. Your children trust your judgment when it comes to choosing books, so it's crucial that you bear this in mind when you hit the library or the bookshop. It's your job to help your children see themselves as little readers, as children who can read exciting and well-written books whenever they want. Children deserve fantastic stories that reflect what life is like for them. They want heroes, compelling and realistic characters they can identify with. They need meaningful books that teach them things and help them understand the world around them. So you've got to help them choose some. So you need to teach your little readers that reading is not only enjoyable, it's incredibly empowering as well. It's important that you read what your child is reading. This will give you valuable insight into what your child might like to read. So do your research. Put yourself in your child's shoes. Read from their perspective as much as you can. If you've read the story, it stands to reason that you'll be able to talk to your child about it and have an informed discussion about the plot, the themes, the characters and the issues raised. Talk about what makes it a good or a bad book, whether or not they liked it, and then use this information to form an impression of how your child reads. This will really help when it comes to choosing new books together. When choosing books for children of any age, you need to think about 3 things. The first one is narrative. You're looking for a storyline that keeps your child engaged and challenged, a plot that motivates them to keep turning the page. The second is tone. Funny books are a good choice for many readers, but some children may respond better to more serious stories that deal with emotions rather than actions. This applies to the themes or issues different books will raise for your child, and you will know best what you'd like your little reader to be thinking about or to be exposed to. Last but definitely not least, you need to think about language. You want your younger and older readers to be challenged but not intimidated by what they're reading. Look for books which use colourful but not heavily descriptive language. You want your child to benefit from every book they read, for their vocabulary and fluency to be improved. If they want to start a new book as soon as they finish an old one, you're on the right track. When you're choosing books for younger readers, make sure you play to their interests. It stands to reason that if your little reader is interested in the book that's being read to them or that they're reading with you, they're more likely to concentrate in the short term and to develop a love of reading in the long term. It's important that they know they don't have to finish a book if they discover they don't like it. Never fall into the trap of making them read a book because you think they should. At this young age, reading should be fun. As your little readers get a bit older, they'll turn into independent readers. Sometimes it seems to happen overnight. As they become more confident, they'll move on to chapter books, stories that are long enough to be divided into chapters, but not yet as long or as complicated as a novel. Illustrations will still be a feature of chapter books, but they will be fewer in comparison with early reader picture books. The most important thing to keep encouraging your children to see themselves as readers and to view reading as a pleasurable and worthwhile pastime. You have to guide and support them in becoming more independent and choosing the books they want to read. Hopefully they will now be starting to read more confidently and will have begun to develop their own reading tastes and preferences. Encourage them to take risks with their choices, to explore different types of books and engage with different authors and series. This will help to extend their reading age. This is where the mysterious art of choosing gets exciting. So here's a little choosing checklist before you give your little reader a new book. Ask yourself 2 questions. Is it the right reading level? Will your little reader read it? And if the answer to both is yes, then you're on the right track. So when choosing books for pre-readers, you're looking for easy to follow sequences, a predictable narrative, repetitive words and phrases, and clear ideas and themes. In choosing books for 5 to 7 year olds, you could look at film tie-ins, more complicated picture books, trilogies, and non-fiction titles as well. In choosing books for 8 to 10 and 12 to 14 year olds, you're looking at classic titles, longer works of fiction, more complex picture books and also graphic novels, humorous books, a shared reading experience, such as books that you read yourself at that age, an independent choice, and maybe some research projects. Reading games can be fun games that the whole family can get involved in. You know that reading is one of the most important things for your children to get stuck into, but did you know that playing is just as important? Playing games brings your children out of the here and now of everyday life and into the world of imagination, where they get to use language and make-believe to help them find out who they are and what they think about the world. So playing is definitely important, and one of the best ways to find games and ideas is through reading. Last time we put together a reading toolkit to make sure your readers are always fully equipped before embarking on a reading adventure, and when there's no time for a full-on reading adventure, that's where reading games come in. Did you ever think that playing Cluedo, Monopoly and Scrabble can help your children with their reading? Board games are one of the best ways to have fun while reading. Think about how many instruction cards you have to read during a game of Monopoly. Cluedo is all about creating stories, murder mysteries to be exact. You get to tell a new story every time you play with a colourful set of characters. And what about Scrabble? It's a game about words, and that means it's the perfect way to improve your child's vocabulary. So get playing. You could even start a family championship. Start a leaderboard and pretty soon your competitive instincts will kick in. So you can make a reading game out of practically anything. Why not set up a spy network in your house? Get some magnetic letters and leave coded messages on the fridge. Write letters to one another and leave them in strategic places around the house. Who knows what missions you might end up on. You could even have a treasure hunt. You can put your thinking caps on and come up with some fiendishly difficult clues and let your reading adventurers loose to search for the treasure. Remind them that they have to tidy up after themselves too, though. And what about role-playing? You can all pick your favourite characters from the best books on your bookshelves and have fun acting out the most exciting scenes. Don't forget to refer back to the books to make sure you're getting it just right. Why not pretend to be your favourite characters at dinner? If Frodo the Hobbit and Harry Potter turn up looking for something to eat, that could lead to some interesting conversations. And why not have a variety evening? Pick your favourite poem and recite it in front of the family. Demand applause and give a reward for the most entertaining performance. Your children will love you for introducing them to poetry, especially if you read some of Roald Dahl's revolting rhymes. Reading and speaking poetry is amazingly good for your little readers' brains. It'll show them a whole new way to use language. You could even quiz yourselves to set up your own game show. Get some quiz books, science, nature and general knowledge books from your library or even from a car boot sale and start swatting up. The whole family can get involved from round one right down to the finals. There have to be prizes too, of course. Why not a brand new book for the winner? And don't forget to get debating. Pick a topic and do some research. You can look up information in books, magazines and newspapers that you have lying around the house, or go to the library on a research trip, anything to get yourselves informed. This debating game will encourage all of you to have opinions on the things you see happening around you, and a good old-fashioned discussion is a great way to pick up new words and spark new interests. And if you don't know the answer to a question, odds are you'll find it in a book. You'll be learning new things, getting yourselves up to date with the world, and having fun too. These are tips and hints to help your little readers become little writers. Reading and writing are connected. They're like two sides of the same fantastic magic. The more your children do of one, the more excited they'll be about the other. Books are full of inspiration for little writers, and pretty soon your little ones' heads will be brimming over with story ideas, anything from dragons and castles to robots and spaceships. So here's how you can help turn those great ideas into even greater stories. First things first, every aspiring writer needs somewhere to write. Examine all the corners in your house from the sitting room to the spare bedroom and decide with your little writer which one feels the most inspirational. This will be the writing corner, and it'll be a quiet, private space where your little writer can go when an idea for a story comes into their heads. It's important that they have somewhere special to go when they want to write, because if they're not careful, ideas can go zinging out as quickly as they go zinging in. Now, the amount of stuff you can fit in the writing corner would depend on how big the corner actually is, but a table is essential, and lots of smooth blank paper to write on. You need pens, pencils, markers and crayons too, especially if your little writer is a budding art illustrator as well. Some brightly coloured pieces of card and a notice board would be nice too, something to stick those stray ideas onto. And don't forget to have a dictionary on standby, and maybe a stack of books too in case the ideas run out. But what happens if inspiration strikes in the supermarket or at the beach? This is where the writing bag comes in. It's for writing on the go. It's important that your children know that reading can happen anywhere, even when they don't have a book with them. We read everywhere we go, and the same is true for writing. Ideas can sneak up on writers in the funniest of places. So having the writing bag handy will help your little writers to take advantage of every single creative opportunity that presents itself. If you bring the writing bag to the beach or the park or even on holiday, they'll learn that it can be great fun to record and narrate important events and special days in their lives. Memories make the best stories, and this way they'll never forget a single happy family moment. So pack a small bag with lots of writing materials, and you'll be able to take the writing corner with you wherever you go. Make sure you've got plain, lined and coloured paper. Variety is the spice of the writer's life. Post-its for those tricky flyaway ideas, envelopes, coloured pencils and maybe a small dictionary too. And don't forget to bring a pencil topper. A broken pencil is no good to anyone. Back at home, and especially on rainy winter days when there's just no way you can go outside, writing games can be a lot of fun, and they'll keep your little writer's brains ticking over all the time. The more they think about stories, the better their stories will be, and the more they'll enjoy the books they're reading. You could all try something called free writing. It's not expensive, I promise. A lot of time, and especially in school, your kids will be writing for a very specific reason. Maybe it's a letter their teacher has asked them to write, or a question from one of their school books. It might even be an essay that the whole class has to work on, or a list of all their favourite animals. With free writing, your children get the chance to write whatever they want, however they want. It can be as long or as short as they like. It can be a poem, a list, a sentence, one story, two stories, even a song. What's important is that it's their time to write what they want. They'll need a notebook that they can decorate to the nines with glitter and stickers and colours, and this will be their free writing workbook. They can keep it in the writing corner if they like, or even beside their bed in case an idea hits them in the middle of the night. Encourage them to write in it a couple of times a week, or even more if they want. Some little writers have an awful lot to say. Talk to them about what they might like to write, and if they want to read it out loud to you afterwards, that's great. When you think about it, reading something you've written out loud is like publishing it. Your little writers will become little authors and feel proud and empowered by what they've achieved. The more they write, the better they'll get, and who knows where their stories might lead them. And one more thing. When your little writers are busy writing their latest epic masterpiece, it's important that they know it's okay to make mistakes. The first draft is never perfect. That's why it's called the first draft. If they need to rip it all up and start again, tell them to go for it. Some stories end up going nowhere, but the next one might take them to the stars. Help them to think of their writing as a quest or a journey. Reading lots and lots of books is like stocking up on provisions, feeding their brains so they're ready when inspiration hits. They can make a story map if they like, just so they have a rough idea of where they're going before they start. Brainstorming can be fun. Watch the lightning strike and the thunder boom when they hit on a good idea. Encourage them to get up and walk around and even think their ideas out loud. When they're happy with the story they've written, why not turn it into a book? They can illustrate it themselves and make a cover out of cardboard, felt, anything at all. So writing can happen anywhere, at home or on the move. The more your child reads, the better their reading will become, and the more they write by themselves, the more they'll appreciate the books they read. From smartphones to tablets, from notebooks to e-readers, new advances in technology have made reading more exciting, colourful, accessible and interactive than ever before. Your children are part of the first generations to grow up with new technology, spending their lives surrounded by and using all those gadgets and gizmos. It's all new to the rest of us though. We've had to actively learn this new digital language, not having been born into the digital world. There are countless apps out there to help your children have fun while they're learning. From maths to spellings, from history to science, there's an answer to every question, and probably an interactive game to help them fully absorb those answers and create their own personal knowledge bank. There's literally no end to the reading fun you and your little readers can have in the digital world. Join an international book club and watch your digital readers' horizons broaden as they come into contact with children from all over the world. Think of the stories they'll hear and the different cultures they'll encounter. The internet makes the world really small, but don't forget that books can take your little readers to different worlds entirely. Start thinking of the internet as an interactive library that's never closed, and you'll be able to keep your little readers cope with the digital waves that seem to be getting bigger and bigger these days. This digital age we've entered is also a visual age, so if your children show an interest in graphic novels and comics, it's important that you encourage them to pursue it. Both will make valuable and beneficial contributions to your child's reading experience. Rather than making the tablet the enemy, make your child's screen time meaningful and productive by encouraging them to use that time to read and explore visual narratives. But we've talked a lot about bonding through books, about you and your children getting to know each other by sharing stories and talking about what you're reading together. As amazing as the digital technology world is, it's very easy to get lost in it. By all means, take advantage of its amazing educational potential, but don't forget to stay connected to each other and not to the internet. The way I see it, e-readers, e-books, reading apps and interactive games are there to add to your children's reading lives, not take them over. You need to be your little reader's guide in the vast world that digital technology can give them access to. Every time you help them navigate that world safely and productively, you're giving them the skills they need to embrace a whole new way of reading, writing and expressing themselves. With your help, it can enrich their lives and enchant them with reading on a whole new level. At the end of the day, it's important to remember that technology is a reading and educational tool, not a replacement for reading. You can help your children use the internet in a responsible and enlightening way. They can raise awareness, start important conversations, reach out into the world, learn more about the books and authors they love, find answers to their questions, and have the chance to see children just like them having a say in changing the society they live in. That's incredibly empowering, don't you think? But as Spider-Man's uncle would say, with great power comes great responsibility, and that's why you have to be beside them every step of the way. So digital technology can make learning incredibly fun and hugely interactive, so much fun that your kids won't even realise they're learning. But at the end of the day, screen time has a limit for a reason, and nothing really compares to snuggling up together with a good book and turning the pages as you read a story to each other. So some creative reading strategies. When reading to young children, you should put as much effort into your performance as you can and bring the story to life. Ask your children how they feel about the story, the characters, if the book is conforming to their expectations. Talk about books. As children get older, you as parents need to stay relevant in their reading lives by reading the same books and having conversations around books. Read everywhere. Make sure reading is an activity that isn't just confined to school or the home. Take books everywhere, so if children are bored, rather than turning to a screen, they can pick up a book. And read outside of books. If a child develops a particular interest in a certain subject from a book, help them research it, turn it into a museum or a library trip. Recommend books to your children that you read at a similar age. This allows for wonderful sharing experiences. And now some general tips. It's incredibly important to encourage reading during the summer. Of course, it's important to get children outside and keep them active, but if reading routines slip during the summer, they'll feel the effects of a lack of reading practice when they return to school. Keep the bedtime reading session in place. Older children should be encouraged to try new and longer books during the summer, as they will have more time to concentrate on a more involved narrative. Get children involved in summer reading programmes promoted in the library. Create your own summer reading challenges at home, complete with rewards and certificates. You shouldn't be too ambitious regarding the amount of books you'd like your child to read during the summer. Just aim to keep them engaged. The summer is an ideal time for you to renew reading bonds with your child. Take a book on outings to the beach or the park and read a chapter as everyone relaxes during a picnic. It's a simple but effective way of keeping reading integral to everyday life. It's important that you know that you can help your children to see themselves as readers. Children need to know that reading is not only enjoyable, it's incredibly empowering as well. It's important that you read what your child is reading and what your child might like to read. And thank you so much for listening to this talk. We've had a few questions for the Q&A session, so I'll go through them now. Question 1. My son loves books but says that he hates reading. He enjoys listening to stories. He gets very frustrated. He doesn't have dyslexia. Any suggestions on getting him to read a book? And I completely understand what this person's son means. Reading can be a lot of effort sometimes. It's great that he loves listening to stories. My first recommendation is audiobooks. He's enriching his imagination with stories and he's developing his listening skills too, without the workload of reading. However, the ultimate aim is to develop his love of reading too. So I recommend starting with comic books and graphic novels. They're exciting and dynamic, incredibly interesting to look at, and packed full of reading, but it's not as obvious as a traditional book. Then you can gradually urge him towards longer and longer books. Concentrate on his interests and see if you can find books that he's excited to read. That's the key here. Once he's excited about a book, he'll forget that he's actually reading. And question number 2. English is not my child's first language. I want help to know what book to read. She's 5 years old. This is a wonderful question, and your child is so lucky to have her own language and to have the chance to learn English as well. Books and stories are a lovely way to ease yourselves into a new language. Keep reading books in your language too, though. This is so important, and I promise it will help her learn even more languages in the future. If she has a favourite book in your language, try and find a story that's similar to it in English. She'll probably read more naturally in her own language, and that's great, so don't be worried if she takes longer with English books. Just encourage her to take her time. A wordless picture book like Journey by Aaron Becker might be a nice place to start. You both tell the story to each other in your language, and then see if you can tell it together in English. Always work as a team and you'll be able to build your confidence along with her. Goodnight Moon by Margaret Wise Brown is another good book to help your daughter improve her vocabulary. It's a lovely list of words rather than a complicated story. She'll also love The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle, and your local library will have lots and lots of picture books for you both to try. And our last question. Hi, my kids have really switched off from reading over the last few months with online lessons. Their attention span has really deteriorated. Do you have any ideas on how I can get them interested again? This is a great question and such a common problem, particularly in these current circumstances. When you think about it, books and reading are such a part of the average school day, and most of the time it hasn't been possible to replicate that through homeschooling. The best thing you can do now is to make reading fun for them. Again, take a leaf out of the library's book and start a summer reading challenge in your house, and you come up with the prizes. There's no harm in giving them a little incentive. You could start a film book club where you watch movie versions of books and compare them. I've spoken about comic books and graphic novels already, but these can be a great game changer for kids who are struggling with their attention spans. And always cater to their interests and try to find books that suit them and build on that. And last but not least, this is great advice for any parents and for all readers. Go to the Children's Books Ireland website for reading guides, book lists, and lots of resources to kickstart your child's love of reading again. Thank you so much for listening.